We're ready to talk about the March 2025 Visa Bulletin that just came out. So let's go through it. As we go through the dates for filing, employment base still can't be used, right, Charlie?
Correct. The Immigration Service announced that effective February 1st, Chart B would no longer be used, and applicants could only use Chart A for filing for adjustment of status cases.
Okay, and your prediction as to when USCIS may allow people to start submitting AOS again or 485 applications again?
Based on historical patterns, they will not allow the Chart B to be used again until the October Visa Bulletin is announced.
Okay, so we're basically at a standstill right now with submitting AOS applications.
Right.
Okay. And then let's talk about all chargeability and let's see if there has been any movement. So, a little bit of movement. I mean, EB1 still remains current, and then EB2 has moved. Any comments on EB2 movement?
No, it was a nice movement, about a month and a half, which is very positive change for employment second. And the E3 held, but that was kind of expected. So again, it's nice that the EB2 advanced some for the month of March. I would expect movements in the EB2 and EB3 for the month of April.
Okay. And then as we go to China, no movement in EB1, but we see some movement in EB2, and then EB3 has been moving along for the past few months.
Yeah, this is again very positive news seeing these green arrows. I would not assume that this type of pattern is going to continue into the future. The fact that they are moving the date is indication that they assumed that there were going to be more people using numbers. They have not, so they're advancing the date in order to stimulate number use. And so we'll have to see if that's able to continue. But again, at this point, it's a positive sign for China.
Okay, good. And then let's go to India. And for India, EB1 has not moved for some time, but then we see some good movement going on in the past 4 months for EB2 and EB3.
Yeah, again, for EB2 and EB3, there's been movement each month, which, to be honest, worries me a little bit that they may be moving the date too fast and that could have negative effects later in the year if their estimates of number use do not prove correct and they start running out of numbers later in the year because number use based on their movements is much greater than they anticipated. We've seen that in past years where they did a rapid advance of the India second and or third, only to find that they retrogressed the date later in the summer months. So I hope that they've learned their lessons from that and we will not see a repeat this year. In the employment first, I would not assume any movement in that date in the foreseeable future. If we get lucky to see a green arrow in employment first, that would be just a much added bonus. But I would not assume any movement of the EB first.
Okay. And then just to summarize your predictions for EB1.
Yeah, I think that the EB1's rest of world current stays current. China, we haven't had any movement and we haven't had any for India. So probably have to scale these back a little bit. Again, my estimate for this movement was based on the dates that are in existence, had been there for so long and been in place at the end of fiscal 2024. So I was hoping for some movement. The fact that China and India have not moved in the employment first is an indication that rest of world employment first preference number use has increased, and therefore there are no, quote, unused numbers which can be used by India and potentially China. With the employment second preference categories, I think across the board, my estimates have been accurate, if not understating the program, which I would much prefer to not get people too excited and make plans. I would rather have my estimates be at 2 weeks and we see a 3 or 4. That's much nicer. The same with employment third preference. I think the estimates over the long haul are accurate. And again, in a best case scenario, we'll see more rapid movement.
Okay, great. And then if we look at our family sponsored preference category, any notable movements there?
No, for the family sponsored listeners, I kind of feel your pain. I continue to be puzzled why there is very limited movement in the family dates, both in fiscal 2024 and so far, for the most part, in fiscal 2025. Whenever the State Department decides to start publishing any fiscal 2024 data, it will be very interesting to see if they hit the family sponsored annual limits for 2024. If they did not hit those limits and have been holding the dates for excessive periods of time, that would be very alarming because they should be moving the dates to maximize number use in the family categories.
Okay, so we'll just have to see once they publish all their data what exactly is going on.
Right.
And then there's a lot of questions, why did USCIS stop accepting the dates for filing or Chart B? So maybe you can kind of give us an explanation utilizing this example.
Right. This example shows how the USCIS, in consultation with the State Department, at the beginning of the year, they would be making the determination of the application filing dates that they would list in Chart B. So, for example, they would decided, okay, the annual limit would be 200,000, that they have potential demand. They would move the application dates to generate 110,000 applicants, so they would subtract the 110,000 from the 200. Then they would look in January and see, okay, we've actually used through December, we've used 60,000. That means we still have 30,000 numbers available for use during the month of January. So we will allow the January Chart B dates to be used for adjustment of status filing. And again, the reason is they still have numbers available to use in that overall limit.
So because they haven't moved Chart B, it basically means USCIS thinks they have enough sufficient numbers to utilize all the numbers that are available.
Yes, to utilize all of the available numbers by the end of the fiscal year. So when they're looking at that potential demand, that 110 figure is what they think can be used based on the application filing dates through the end of September. And the Immigration Service, to allow Chart B to be used, they have to be able to say there are still numbers immediately available for use in the fiscal year. So now on this chart, back in January, they would have been again looking at their calculations. They would have said, okay, we started out with a 200,000 limit. We set application dates, which would generate 110,000 demands. So they subtract that. Then they look back and say, okay, through January, we estimate that they'll actually have used 90,000 numbers. So when they do those subtractions, there are zero numbers still immediately available. Therefore, they would say for the February Visa Bulletin, we will no longer accept filings based on Chart B. Effective February 1st, only the dates listed in Chart A will be used. And once USCIS makes that decision, that would be for the remainder of the fiscal year. So the fact that they did this effective February 1st of this year means that Chart A will be the only way people can file for adjustment of status February through September.
Yeah, and probably people have already filed. So the green cards that'll be approved or the 485s that'll be approved are the ones that are already in queue.
Right.
And then just wait for the date to become current.
Yeah, and this is why it's very important for applicants when you're able to file based on the Chart B dates. It's very important to act in a very timely manner and do so and get the information in. So if people were able to file through January, your application is in the pool they're working on, and they'll continue to work on those cases throughout the year. And then they would submit them to the Department of State, and the Department of State would then hold that request for Frank's case with A number 123. They would hold Frank's case. And then, whenever a visa number becomes available in the remaining months, then Frank's case could be adjusted immediately.
Yeah.
So that it's a very good thing. It gives the State Department much more visibility into potential demand based on their movements of the final action dates in the coming months.
Yeah, the reason why we see cases are delayed in filing, honestly, is travel for adjustment. The applicants have to be physically in the country when the application is received. And that's usually when we try to talk to our clients and advise them that it's best not to travel until the applications have been received. And then they could travel if they have an H-1B or an L-1 visa status. But any other visa status type, they need to just stay put until they get the travel document. So that's the reason why we normally see that the 485 filings get delayed. And we're going to have a webinar again, and you could just follow us on LinkedIn in order to register. And Charlie will give some more updates and hopefully some positive news as to whether there may be some extra numbers going into EB1. So we'll have to wait and see. But any other comments, Charlie?
No, it's just a pleasure to be able to speak to everybody again this month.
Yep, and it's been a positive Visa Bulletin. Thank you, everyone.